Global Health Council, this is one of the NGOs, versus the great and powerful President Donald J. Trump in his official capacity as the Article 2 executive branch president, elected by the whole of the American people to carry out our political will, our American political will. That's how this should read. Damn it. Put me in charge. All the people involved in the case before Henderson, Katsas, and Pan, a 3-judge panel on the Court of Appeals. Henderson writing the opinion. This is a case about executive impoundment of funds. President Trump saying, I don't want to spend this money. I don't know if it's being stolen. We're looking out for waste, fraud, and abuse, and this is $2 billion. On January 20th, 25, one of the greatest days in American history, Judge Henderson should be writing, the date on which Donald J. Trump was sworn in as the 47th president of the United States on a war footing with a stack of dozens of executive orders piled high on the resolute desk for his immediate signature and action. That January 20th, 2025, President Trump issued an executive order directing the State Department and America's enemy, the Agency for International Development, USAID, to freeze foreign aid spending, seeking to restore the flow of funds. Aid grantees, these would be the thieves and America's enemies. This would be USAID, NGOs, and America's enemies, foreign and domestic, sued under the Administrative Procedure Act and the U.S. Constitution. Again, I've talked about this before. The left, the progressive left, if they did not have lies and false narratives to tell, they would have nothing to say at all. The left is abusing the APA, the Administrative Procedure Act, in exactly the opposite of the way it was intended to operate. The reason the APA was created in the first place was to protect American citizens against arbitrary and capricious regulations by these unelected independent governmental agencies like the EPA, like the Federal Reserve, looking at you, Federal Reserve, these unelected, so-called independent agencies with no legitimate existence within our constitutional order. These agencies were issuing mandates and rules and orders that were insane. And if you violated one of these insane orders, you could be put in prison. And America had enough. And our American Congress said, you know what? We're going to create the APA. If one of these unelected, so-called independent agencies creates a mandate that's arbitrary and capricious, we're going to allow American citizens to sue to stop that arbitrary and capricious rule. In other words, the purpose of the APA is to protect American citizens from an overbearing, tyrannical, unelected government bureaucracy. But how is the left using the APA here in its lawfare against Trump? It's using the APA in exactly the opposite manner it's intended to operate. It's using the APA to protect the unelected, independent, so-called independent, tyrannical government entities from the will of the American people. The left are monsters who must never be put in charge of anything societally important. This expedited appeal by Trump arises from the district court, that would be the district court of our good friend, culturally Muslim, foreign-born, federal judge, unelected black robe tyrannical inferior district trial court judge Amir Hatem Mahdy Ali. His grant of a preliminary injunction requiring, in relevant part, the government to make available the full amount of foreign assistance funds that Congress had appropriated before Trump was elected president. by the American people to carry out our political will. Keep in mind, by the way, folks, when we're talking about temporary restraining orders and preliminary injunctions, they're supposed to freeze things. They're supposed to stop someone from doing things. The way these leftists, these progressive fascist judges use their TROs or preliminary injunctions is again in the opposite of the manner in which they're intended. Instead of freezing action, this judge, Amir, Hatem, Mahdy, Ali, was using a preliminary injunction to order action, order something to be done that was not happening, ordering Trump to release $2 billion of our money to our nation's enemies. The unelected, black-robed, tyrannical, inferior district trial court judge Amir, Hatem, Mahdy, Ali erred. Oh, he made an error? This non-American judge raised to the federal bench, he made an error? Can't believe it. The judge raised to the bench November 20th, weeks after President Trump's election, made an error, granting that relief, that injunction, because the people who wanted the money lack a cause of action to press their claims. They have no fundamental right to the money. They're simply not entitled. Oh, sorry, it was just a bookkeeping error. This non-American born judge made a slight error that would have cost us $2 billion of money funneled to our nation's enemies. What should be the consequence of that? Shouldn't the minimal consequence of a $2 billion oops to our nation's enemies, shouldn't the minimum consequence be removal from the federal bench? How big of an error is large enough that it mandates removal from the bench? How much can a federal judge screw up before we decide he's not temperamentally suited for this job? Is a $2 billion mistake not enough? Because had that money gone out, it would be unrecoverable. No way to reverse it. That's what this judge thought he had the authority to order. The people who demanded our $2 billion may not bring a freestanding constitutional claim that they have a constitutional right to this money if the alleged violation, the alleged denial, and the claim of authority to the money are statutory. You have to pick. Either you have a constitutional complaint or you have a statutory complaint. Nor do they have a claim under the APA, because the APA is precluded by the fact that there's an alternative statute that is authoritative and controls here. And the people who want the money, America's enemies, may not magically reframe this fundamentally statutory dispute as simply Trump acting lawlessly. No kings, an ultra virus beyond the law claim either. Who can complain about Trump not spending the money? Well, the Comptroller General can. By the way, he's within the executive branch. He's basically the executive branch accounting department. He can bring a suit, or Congress could bring a suit, as authorized by the Impoundment Control Act. So Congress could have complained about Trump not giving this $2 billion to our nation's enemies, but they didn't. And the people who did complain, our nation's enemies, were unhappy they were not getting our money. They cannot make a claim for the money. They have no right to it. So we, the Court of Appeals, vacate the part of Judge Amir Hatem, Mahdy Ali's preliminary injunction against Trump and ordering him to give our enemies $2 billion. Kate, $5. We're helping to pay for the tires on the Beamer. Yeah, lead foot, Miss Emily. I concur, cannot drive 55. Fellas, I'll just tell you, if you buy your wife a car with 400 horsepower, be prepared to buy tires. I love my wife dearly, but she does not love tires. I mean, I can almost hear those tires crying every time she gets into the car. Oh no. What are we going to do? All right. Under the Constitution, this opinion continues. Congress has the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, impose excises, to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1. In other words, the Congress may raise and appropriate money to advance the general welfare. The Constitution further mandates that no money shall be drawn from the Treasury, but in consequences of appropriations made by law. No one can spend money that Congress has not allocated. Congress, therefore, has exclusive power over the federal purse to allocate money. At the same time, and this is important, the Take Care Clause charges the executive branch with enforcing federal laws, including spending power laws, and to take care, that's what that means, that the laws be faithfully executed. What that means is Congress is the one who decides how much money can be spent on something, but the executive branch still has the authority and responsibility to make sure that the spending of that money is not waste, fraud, and abuse, that the spending of that money would not just be theft, to take care that the money's not just being stolen. Two different roles for two different branches of government. The political branches of government, by the way, which the Article 3 judicial branch is not. The Congress has also enacted legislation providing a framework for furnishing foreign assistance in support of specified international development goals. Congress appropriates foreign assistance funds for the State Department and USAID, one of these insane so-called independent agencies that has no legitimate functional role within our constitutional order. Our Constitution says there are three branches of government: Article 1, legislative; Article 2, executive; Article 3, judicial. There is no Article 4, independent agency branch of government. All these dozens of agencies that are so-called independent agencies, like the EPA, like the Federal Reserve, looking at you, Powell, like USAID, have no legitimate existence in our constitutional order. They are a cancer in our body politic. Our founders would be spinning in their graves. But Congress appropriates foreign assistance funds for the State Department within Article 2 and this monstrosity that is USAID. Here, the people being denied money allege that President Trump has unlawfully impounded, delayed, or withheld certain sums that they believe they were entitled to. For example, amounts at issue include almost $4 billion for USAID to spend on global health activities. Let me ask you folks a question, those of you who are productive tax-paying American citizens. Do our citizens not have a need for $4 billion of health care, of education, of housing, of employment, of social services? Do we have too many of those things? Is your mortgage too low? Is your rent too low? Is your child's college expenses too low? You got any college loans, anybody? Is there too much employment for you? There's not enough third world Indians taking our jobs here in America. We have too many jobs. Is that what's happening? Is your health insurance too inexpensive? Health care is too easily affordable? That $4 billion of assistance on those fronts would not be desirable for American citizens. Instead, it's in our greater interest to send that money to our enemies, nations, our nation's enemies, $4 billion and over $6 billion for HIV programs. Why are we spending $10 billion on people who could not give an F about America, except for our money, our citizens, our interests, our children, our welfare. 10 billion. 10 billion dollars. In 1970, listen, if we had enough of everything we need to meet our needs, the needs of ourselves, our family, our tribe, our community, our nation, then yeah, that's what charity is for. But you know where moral charity goes? Moral charity goes to your tribe, community, and nation before a dollar is spent anywhere else. The 340 million people who created and sustain a nation capable of producing the wealth, the surplus that America produces. We don't owe a damn thing to people who turn their nations into shitholes. That's not an us problem. That's a them problem. We've given them a roadmap on how not to be a shithole. Do it like we do it. Instead, they just want our money. Trump said no. I say no. I expect most of you say no. Judge Amir Hatem Mahdy Ali, foreign-born U.S. federal judge, he said yes. He said take that $10 billion away from the interests of America and American citizens and send it to the third world and to fatten the politicians and activists who are America's domestic enemies. And he's still on the federal bench. Is having Judge Amir Hatem Mahdy Ali, is it in America's national interest to have this foreign-born cultural Muslim as a federal judge? Is it? I'm open to debating the question, but I don't really see the debate. How is it in America's interest to have this guy, Amir Hatem Mahdy Ali, not born an American citizen, culturally a Muslim, been living in the U.S. a decade, to make him a federal judge? Not just a federal judge who purports to have more authority in his little limp-wristed gavel than does the Article 2 executive branch president elected by 340 million Americans to carry out our political will. Why aren't these questions raised in the Senate? Would you want this guy to make a decision about what kind of shoes you wear if he's making $10 billion mistakes on the federal bench? In 1974, the Congress imposed statutory requirements on the executive branch dealing with the expenditure of funds. To reserve funds within the executive, a permanent impoundment, the president must send a special message to both chambers of Congress, the House and the Senate. That special message must address the amount of money at issue, the department and project or functions involved, the reasons for rescinding or reserving the money, the fiscal, economic, and budgetary effects, and the relevant facts, circumstances, and considerations, as well as the effects on the programs and their goals. Any amount proposed to be rescinded or reserved shall be made available for obligation unless the Congress passes a rescission bill within 45 days of receipt of the special message. So the president is allowed to withhold money. He just has to do it following a particular procedure. He also has to send a special message when he wants to defer or temporarily impound funds. So that first procedure was to permanently impound funds, a different procedure to temporarily impound funds. Although the president may make trivial and everyday deferrals for routine programmatic reasons, he may not do so based on policy disagreements, and he must still report programmatic deferrals to the Congress. Congress can disapprove a proposed deferral through an impoundment resolution. The ICA, a statute of Congress, also provides procedures to ensure timely congressional consideration of a bill or resolution regarding a proposed rescission or deferral. Finally, the ICA sets out a mechanism for reporting and enforcement by the Comptroller General. The Comptroller General is the head of the Government Accounting Office, which is constitutionally part of the Article 1 legislative branch. This guy or girl, this guy has a legal right to go to court and challenge President Trump's pausing of spending money. You know who doesn't have that right? The people who are stealing the money. You have a bank, the bank's accountants can say, hey, what's going on with this money? I sent it to pay this bill and it hasn't gone out. And then someone says, well, you know, it looks like the people who were going to receive that money were just stealing it. The thieves who were stealing it don't get to come to court and say, yes, I want the money I was trying to steal. They don't have a legal right to come to court and compel the payment of that money. Now, the bank accountant can. The Comptroller General, in this context, can. If the Comptroller General finds the president or another executive official is to defer funds, he must report the reserve or deferral to the Congress and issue a special message again. If that guy, the Comptroller General, brings a lawsuit, then an unelected black-robed tyrannical inferior district trial court judge in the District of Columbia is empowered to enter any decree, judgment, or order which may be necessary to make such budgetary authority available for obligation. That's where the role of a federal judge comes in deferral of spending. If this guy, the Comptroller General, the head of the General Accounting Office, a department of the Article 1 legislative branch, if he complains, that triggers the authority of a federal judge. Not if the thieves complain.
Thanks for watching this highlight segment of our full-length Law Self-Defense live stream. If you enjoyed this content, make sure to give us a like and subscribe for more expert analysis on politics, law, and how to be hard to convict. And to watch the full-length episode of this show, just click right here. Stay safe.